Ready for my thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good evening again. I'd like to call the community of the whole for the Village of Cary for January 16th, 2024 to order with roll call, please.
Walrath,
Here.
Weinhammer,
Here.
Dudek,
Here.
Collier,
Here.
Stefani,
Here.
McAlpine.
Here.
Thank you. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Moving to the public comments, the public is invited to make an issue-oriented comment on any matter of public concern not otherwise on the agenda. So if you have anything else to say besides the issue pending on Hilltop, we'd love to hear from you now. None said. We'll go ahead and close that at 6:42. 43. Too funny. Thank you. We have one item on the agenda today is the Hilltop subdivision sidewalk discussion. Who's going to take this off? Kalen? Kalen?
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight we're here to discuss the Hilltop subdivision sidewalks. Over the last several years, there's been discussion on whether to add sidewalks to the subdivision. If so, how would those sidewalks be configured? As part of the road program this year, we utilized some of the funds to work with our engineers at HR Green to come up with conceptual exhibits on potential sidewalks within the subdivisions and what those impacts would be. Over the last several months, we've been working with the community to engage them in an open house that took place last week. It happened with the impending weather, and we had some good turnout over there. So we sent out surveys that were similar to the ones that were sent out in 2022 to gather as much information from the residents as possible. Over the last several months, staff has sent out the notices to the subdivision and had that open house on January 9th to understand whether sidewalks were wanted by the residents, and if so, what configuration fit best. Along with the mailed notices, there was a survey that was sent out with QR codes that we'll see here in these upcoming slides with exhibits and what our conceptual design look like, 2 configurations, and then the survey took them to a Survey Monkey where we asked them what preferred alternative they liked, as well as an area for comment. A few days prior to the open house, we put out door hangers. We walked to the doors and put door hangers on to remind them of the open house, just to try and engage them as much as possible to get as much feedback as we could. And as we get in, a lot of these slides that we see right here were also presented at the board meeting, similar to the exhibit over here. We had on easels spread throughout the boardroom here for all the residents to see, ask questions, and provide feedback. This is the existing conditions exhibit, which was shown at that open house. As you can see, there are approximately 40 homes impacted in the subdivision. There are portions of sidewalk that are currently existing. They're highlighted in yellow on this slide, and there are some private landscaping, trees, fencing, and retaining wall that are within the right-of-way that would potentially be impacted by sidewalk installation, which I'll point out later in some of these slides as well. And the point of the open house meeting, the goal was to, like I mentioned, gauge as much interest from the subdivision as possible to get that feedback from them. Our tentative time frame that was projected in the fall of 2023, we developed those concept alternatives, which we did with our roadway program. In the winter, this past the 9th of January, we did some community engagement to see if sidewalks were warranted within the subdivision. And then, if there was one, we would select that prior to the spring of 2024, so we would be able to budget appropriately. If approved, we would look to start engaging the engineering in the next budget year. And then again, if approved, we would look to start construction around 2025. There were two concepts that were presented. Option one was a 6-foot carriage walk from the back of the curb, which we'll see here shortly. And option two was a 4-foot sidewalk with a parkway buffer, both standard practice for a carriage walk and a sidewalk. The third option that was presented on the survey was installing no sidewalk. So those were the three options that were provided to those residents. As just mentioned, option one, these were the exhibits that were provided. We have a 6-foot sidewalk from the back of curb. There are two exhibits here, one showing the aerial on the bottom right-hand side with the orange highlighting what that proposed 6-foot sidewalk would look like. As you can see, as I mentioned, potential property impacts in the southeast corner of this exhibit along Cherry and Hill Street. The I'll call it a leaf emblem dictates those impacts for this alternative. The other exhibit in the top shows the spacing from street view perspective along with the QR code that was provided by the engineers. Neat little feature where you could scan that QR code and it would take you to a YouTube link where it would show interactive, the people walking, the cars moving, and kind of give you a better idea of what that would look like. With the 6-foot sidewalk installation as displayed by the orange line in the bottom right, it's approximately 3,750 linear feet, utilizing rough numbers of $175 linear feet for construction costs. It would cost approximately $656,250 to construct. Another alternative would be to just put the sidewalk on the what I call the outside perimeter, instead of the interior of Hill, Cherry, and Ross. That would reduce some sidewalk, which would ultimately reduce some cost, but still having pedestrian access. That configuration would be about 2,780 linear feet, dropping the cost to $486,500 roughly. Option two is a 4-foot sidewalk with a parkway buffer. Again, there's two exhibits, one showing the aerial view of the location of the sidewalk. This one shows different impacts to the potential tree or property impacts with the leaf exhibit or leaf emblem. The other exhibit, again, the perspective from the street with that same QR code that takes you to the YouTube video. This 4-foot sidewalk installation as displayed by the orange, again, same amount of sidewalk, same linear footage with a reduced cost of $160 a linear foot for a total cost of $600,000. Utilizing that same idea of just doing the outside perimeter, dropping the linear footage to 2,780 linear feet, that reduces the cost to approximately $444,800 for construction. When we're thinking about how we would fit this into a CIP, if it moves forward, this is what we have currently designated for our 5-year roadway program, fiscal year 25 to 29, and the costs we have for roadway improvements. If it was elected to move forward with the sidewalk installation, we would likely either lump it in with an existing project or reduce the scope of one of these years to install those sidewalks. We would do that just for potential cost-saving measures that we could benefit from not having one contractor or two contractors mobilize in twice. This next slide is a neat exhibit that the engineers put together. One of the concerns brought up at the open house was the parking limitations created by the sidewalk. When we put that sidewalk in, they can't block the sidewalk, so how does that impact their property. So we went through each property within the subdivision, and option 1 versus option 2, how does that impact as opposed to their existing no sidewalk parking spots? And this goes for both that 4-foot and 6-foot sidewalk. There was a couple items that were noted in that open house. If you look at 22 South 2nd Street, highlighted in red there, they currently have 2 parking spots. If we went with option 2, they would have 0 parking spots within their driveway just because of how short it is. There's multiple other ones where they go from 2 to 1, or no change 1, just depending on that, depending on the alternative that would be chosen. As I mentioned, we received a lot of feedback from the open house. To summarize some of that feedback, both in favor and against the sidewalk, there was the idea that the sidewalk allows for pedestrian safety, it provides somewhere for children to ride bikes and play outside of the street, allows better access to downtown, and it gives safety to drivers knowing that the kids are not in the sidewalk, or I'm sorry, not in the roadway. The other feedback we received, as I just mentioned, the parking spots, reducing 2 spots to 1 or 2 spots to 0. Another item that was noted was when the roadways were improved several years ago, they widened the road, which impacted the front yard easement a couple of feet, and there's concern about the sidewalk also impacting that front easement even further than what happened several years back. And another item that was mentioned was concern of installing more non-permeable material with the sidewalks. Just so you guys are aware, this is a survey that was sent out, or this is a paper version that was here. Same survey was put out in that SurveyMonkey. It had the QR codes with the exhibits so that they could see what those options were. Gave them option 1, option 2. We tried to make it as short as possible. SurveyMonkey said mostly everybody finished this in 2 minutes, and that's what we were going for. We want a short and simple survey so that people don't X out of it because there's too many questions. So we asked for the address so we knew who was replying to it, and there wasn't one person from one address stacking the survey. So these were the survey results. We have the survey results from 2022, which asks very similar questions. In the 2022 survey, 35% of the 40 households responded, 71 not in favor of sidewalk, and 41 were in favor, or I'm sorry, 4 responses, 29% were in favor. This last survey that we just put out, we got a little more response, which was good. We got 60% of the 40 households responded. 60% wanted no sidewalk, 1, which equaled 3%, wanted 4-foot sidewalk, and 37% were in favor of that 6-foot carriage walk from the back of curb. This is an example. One of the questions that was brought up in that open house too is what other neighborhoods don't have sidewalk? And these are some of those areas. Brigadoon, Lake Killarney, Bright Oaks, Trout Valley, Sienna Point, and Jandis subdivision. They are some of the examples of other neighborhoods that don't have sidewalk. Today we see with new subdivisions that are being put up a requirement, but in these older subdivisions that were installed, we don't always necessarily see them existing. With all this information, what are we looking for? We're looking for a consensus on whether to move forward with design construction with sidewalk within the subdivision. If we would like to, what that preferred alternative is a 4-foot or a carriage walk. And within that answer, if it's a 4-foot or 6-foot, do we just do the outer perimeter, the entire neighborhood, or is there another preferred alternative that is out there? I appreciate the time and any feedback you may have or any questions that I may be able to answer for you.
Does anybody have any questions right now?
Can you put the slide back up that shows the impact to the parking spots? Just so we have it for reference. Thank you.
Because I have a list of people that like to.
Do you want the residents to comment first, or do you want us to
Yeah,
comment?
kind of like to hear what they have to say.
Residents
And I understand that the public meeting that was the other day got a little heated. I'd like a little bit more professionalism here tonight. We're here to listen to what everybody has to say. This is not an easy decision. You know, every decision that we make in the village of Cary has a public safety implication. And that's something that's very important to the entire board. And we look at these things very seriously. It's a large amount of money to spend, money we don't really have, but you know, to figure out how we can do something that would engage everybody. One of the things that I've been contacted from too is, you know, people want it, people don't. You know, you look at the survey, you look at the survey results. You know, we live in a democracy where majority rules, but we're trying to figure out what's going to be the best for the village of Cary. We try to do things on a case-by-case basis. When you look at some of the other areas within the community that doesn't have sidewalks, like it was mentioned, Sienna Point, that's a townhouse development. That's something that's completely different. Doesn't get a lot of traffic through there. Trout Valley, separate community. What was the down by the river? That's like riverfront kind of a thing that just goes with that aesthetic. Lake Killarney is unincorporated. So, you know, those aren't real fair for us. We try to do what's best for the village, and we look at these things very seriously. That being said, we have to look at, well, without overstepping my reach here is the mayor's, we've got to do what's best for the entire community. We have to look at this, what's the impact going to be for the Hilltop subdivision. It's, you know, you look at it, the access to your subdivision it's just one way in, one way out. You have, from the surveys that we've done, you have 258 vehicles going in and out of there on a daily basis versus some of the other subdivisions that have 5,000 people going in and out. So when we're listening to what you say, hopefully in a very professional, respectful way, know that we have this information behind, but we're going to do what we feel is best for the entire community. I understand that there was a petition that was drawn. That's awesome. That's great, getting outside community feedback. But again, we try to do what's best for the village of Cary. When we're talking about the home rule thing, you know, people are talking about what other communities are doing that. Our board makes decisions in the best way that we can for the village of Cary, and we will continue to do that. So. Without any further ado, I'd like to start the public comment. There's going to be people that are going to want one way and one the other. So I want everybody to be respectful. That's what we look for, is just be respectful for other people's opinions. And we'll take it from there. We'll start with Holly Savage.
I just want to thank you all for taking the time again today. I did not make it to any of the other meetings because I was working late. So thank you again for your time and effort and consideration. I do respect my neighbors with opposing view, but I am in favor of sidewalks. I think that there is a need. I grew up in a neighborhood very similar with no sidewalks, and yes, it was a very different environment then. I think that specific to Hilltop, we have 40-plus children currently in the neighborhood. We have 2 blind intersections that I would encourage you to consider. Increased traffic with the dispensary. I see people coming in and doing U-turns all the time in that first intersection there. If they don't make it all the way around, those people are not familiar with our neighborhood, and it gets a little scary with how fast they're going. I know that the data is out there. There's not much traffic, but it has increased. I have 3 children I have a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And my older children do not feel safe because of the accident that happened 2 years ago. And I just ask that when you guys think about this and when you make your decision, you think of the children and you think of the little boy who lost his life. I was there that day. I tried to save him. There was nothing I could do but hold his hand and tell him how much he was loved. Tonight, I can stand up here and ask you guys to help make our neighborhood safer for all, for the current children who've lived through the unimaginable and the future children who are going to be moving in years to come. So thank you.
As long as I have you here, you would like a sidewalk. Do you have a particular sidewalk? Would you like the carriage walk or a regular parkway?
Honestly, I am open to whatever's best for the majority and the budget. I understand. I think that I would be comfortable with having it on the outer perimeter because it gives the children an opportunity to be safe. You know, even if they have to cross the street, that's just crossing, you know, one intersection. So that would be my vote.
Okay, thank you. Allison? Could you state your name and address?
Yes, of course. My name is Allison Vorbach. I'm at 120 Cherry Street in the Hilltop subdivision. In April, it will be 19 years since we moved in. And when we first arrived to Hilltop and started to meet our neighbors, we learned that a few years prior, the village took a look at our neighborhood and wanted to add sidewalks and parkways. Same conversation we're having right now. We were told that the residents then successfully kept the village from doing it, and if they had put the sidewalks in, a large portion of our front yard would have been taken. We were convinced that this was a good thing and that we were grateful to our new neighbors for keeping those sidewalks off our property. Then I became a parent, and I started to worry about how fast cars would fly around the corner, to the point that I feared allowing my children, who are now 15 and 17, I didn't allow them to ride around the block unless the other neighbor kids were out. I figured safety in numbers was the best bet. All the while, I remembered hopping on my own big wheel when I was a kid and racing my brother up and down our sidewalk back home while he ran alongside me in the grass. See, we didn't play in the street back then because it wasn't deemed safe. And I grew up in a rural town in Wisconsin of 600 people in the 80s, when practically nothing was considered unsafe. I found myself wishing for sidewalks when my children were young, even when I recalled how much of our yard would be affected. And yes, my building or my property is one of the little icons that was just shown up on the screen. I found myself wishing that we had sidewalks, even though our yard would be effective and that we'd suddenly have more work to do in the winter when it snowed. In fact, when the survey came around 2 years ago, I regretfully replied that I did not want the work to be done. And then what we would all like to assume is unthinkable or only a random and freak accident occurred. I will never forget the day we lost one of our neighborhood children. I will never forget the sounds and the sights of that tragic day and the deep mourning in the days that followed. It is seared into my memory forever. And now, honestly, it is unfathomable to me that we're even having this discussion, to be honest. I respectfully ask the village to add sidewalks to Hilltop. I do also ask the village to entertain a variance to allow for 4-foot carriage. I know that wasn't one of the options, but I think it might be a compromise for the folks that are not interested in having as much as their yard taken up. I'm not sure if that's a opportunity, but if it's something that could be discussed, I would like it discussed. If not, I know that you just asked Holly. I guess I'm in the same boat. I'm open to either option, one or two. I don't think that no sidewalks is a viable option anymore, however. In fact, I'd like to be on the record saying that there is no amount of lawn space, landscaping, or snow removal backache avoidance that is worth more than the safety of a vulnerable child.
Thank you. We can't do a 4-foot carriage walk, right? They don't allow that. The state doesn't allow that?
No, I think we had mentioned or discussed that at prior meetings, that based on the manner of our funding for our road programs, we do have the Illinois DOT local roads standards that we follow and get review on, and the minimum width is 7 foot on state routes and 6 foot for local roads. And that's due to the fact of the clearance to the adjacent traffic. giving the pedestrians that comfort level and that safety level of not having the mirrors in the vehicles rushing so close to them at speed.
That's what I thought was the situation with that. Nick?
Hello, board members. My name's Nick Branson. I live at 15 Ross Avenue in the Hilltop neighborhood. And I'll keep this short and sweet. I sent you a message via email expressing my support, my family's support for sidewalks in our neighborhood. I just want to say, like others who have just spoken, that we really support some solution for the neighborhood that allows people to move about without being in the street. And that parking is an important concern should cue you to the fact of how much more traffic is in our neighborhood, how many more cars are in our neighborhood now than they were many years ago. And the reality is this has been an issue since homes were being built in our neighborhood, and that's why we have these short stretches of existing sidewalk, and we let individual houses decide if they wanted that or not. But really where that landed us was no solution at all to navigate around our small community without being in the street. And this is really critically important for my family because my daughter Maxine has dwarfism, and at 9 years old, she is about the size of a 3-year-old, and she is difficult for cars to see. We experience that all the time. But she has to go in the street to navigate the neighborhood, to walk to her friends' houses across the neighborhood, to get to the bus stop. And while it's really important for our family and for Maxine, I want to be really clear that this is a benefit not just for Maxine. It is a benefit for all of the kids in our neighborhood who have to walk to each other's houses in the street and bike in the street. It's a benefit for those of us who exercise around our neighborhood and have to walk or jog in the street. And it's a benefit to those who walk their pets, again, in the street. And anyone who may have to move around our neighborhood with a cane or a walker or someday maybe someone in a wheelchair. All of that would have to be done, again, in the street. And so we just want to urge you to find some solution for our neighborhood because our current state really does not provide that solution. Like the others, I am open to compromise and what would minimize impact to neighbors who have concerns over parking and landscaping. So either option 1 or 2 is okay with us, but we really would appreciate, again, some solution that serves our neighborhood.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah.
Ellen, did you want to speak as well? Okay. John Morbach?
I did not fill out the survey, and I could not attend the open house. But I was at previous meetings, and I'm here now. Safety should be our paramount concern, yours specifically. Whether it's the immediate or in the future, if you decide not to put in sidewalks, you're not doing enough to prevent a future tragedy. I'm willing to say publicly that many of us in our neighborhood that are complaining about the proposed sidewalks do not have younger kids currently. Many, not all, that will complain do not walk in our neighborhood regularly. When the village sent out the notice of the open house in this meeting, there were 2 options, 2 different types of sidewalks, as noted, and there was also the option for no sidewalks. That is not an option. You have to care about safety. I understand the concern with getting funding from the state and the parameters that are required there, but I do encourage you to take a look at the requirement for a parkway buffer if you do the sidewalk option. There are other sidewalks in the village that are close to major thoroughfares that have smaller sidewalks. I've measured. As noted in the proposed sidewalk plan, the inner circle is not complete as there is no sidewalk on the east side of 2nd Street. A complete loop for people and kids to walk and play without having to cross a single street will make this plan even safer. More expensive, but safer. I find it jarring that we talk about the Sideway project and how much it costs, and immediately follow with a slide showing the beautification of the downtown area where we spent a lot of money. And it seems everything is branded Cary. I submit that you can find money for something that increases the safety of our community. It was mentioned that vehicle traffic volume in our subdivision. I ask you to look at those subdivisions that don't have sidewalks and study how many fatalities occurred in them. The proposed sidewalk is not just for kids in our neighborhood now. It's for all the kids that will live in the subdivision for years to come. It's for all who live in the subdivision now and in the future. You're here for planning for the future. It is currently not completely safe to walk in our neighborhood in the streets in this subdivision.
Johanna Snyders?
Hi, my name's Johanna. I live at 117 Cherry Street. We have a lot of people to protect in this neighborhood. We have children of every age. We have people with disabilities, people who are wheelchair bound, people who walk their pets at night. We have parents with severe trauma from something that could have possibly been prevented with something as simple as a sidewalk. I care about the safety of my neighbors and my own family more than property, and I would like sidewalks put in to ensure everyone has a safe place to walk and play. My children got a ride-on toy for Christmas, a 24-volt ride-on toy. And my heart drops when they use it, because I know that they won't have a place to use it other than the same road where they could potentially be unsafe and killed. If anyone here has young kids, you know that they are not going to stick by your side every single time you take them for a walk. They want to run, they want to be children. You can't always be there to hold their hand. And in our neighborhood, you have to be there to hold their hand, because if you don't, they could be killed. I'm asking you to make the choice that provides a bit of relief to our grieving mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, and neighbors. Please make the choice that will provide safety and closure. We deserve that. Everyone who presently lives here, who will live here in the future, and especially for the little boy who is not here anymore. And I know there's other communities and other neighborhoods who don't have sidewalks, but our neighborhoods have severe trauma. We have awful, awful memories that, for some people, the morning lasted a few days, and for some people, it will go on until they take their last breath. And when you guys make this decision, I want to think about you to think about your little ones. I want to think about you to think about when your little kids loved Mickey Mouse and dinosaurs and Woody and Buzz, and never getting to watch them grow out of that phase. And we can ensure that doesn't happen to anyone else in this neighborhood with something as simple as sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Kate Arnenberg?
Hello. I'm not good at this, so I apologize.
Well, let's start with your name and address.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm Catherine Arneberg. I live at 127 Cherry Street. I was actually one of the first on the scene that day, along with my husband, who chooses not to be here because he can't listen to this. Thank you, Holly, for being there to check him out, because we wouldn't be able to back away. I'm going to make this just very simple. I believe a neighbor helps a neighbor. One of our neighbors has tragically died. I find it really strange how everyone who doesn't want sidewalks are the ones that didn't see Samuel's, a 3-year-old's body laying lifelessly on the pavement so many of us stepped foot on prior for a nice stroll or taking a dog for a walk. To the neighbors that do not want sidewalks, don't think you aren't being heard. From the opposing view, we hear and listen to your opinions. You most definitely are being listened to. Your opinions matter the same amount as everyone else's. I respect your opinions. I respect each and every one of you. I will say, however, I can't grasp your opinions. I've looked at your side, and I still have the question that no one seems to be able to answer, and that's, does a patch of grass matter more to you than a child's life? There's comments I've heard that are pretty sad to me. For example, it only happening once, and that I'm short, and just to pay attention. Well, everyone once is enough for me, and that once shouldn't have happened. Maybe Sam would still be alive today if there were sidewalks. And about the height comment, you are not a child. Children get easily distracted. And my last thing, I find it very odd that some who do not want sidewalks were the ones hugging Rachel and Brandon while their child lay lifelessly under a blanket on the pavement just feet before them. That you are also a part of the reason this family isn't getting what they wish for. Please just do something to just make it better, because it's not right. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Rachel?
Hi, Rachel Huddleston. I live at 121 Hill Street. I made the mistake last time of going first, and I was completely railroaded by, I didn't think my neighbors would make comments that they made. It was just one accident, and their children are fine. But it was Samuel, and Samuel's dead. Samuel will never live past 3 years old. I have 5 children who, a few of them saw their brother, and they don't want to walk in the street. I also, with some current things I have going on, I need to watch what I say, but I was with Samuel. Samuel wasn't alone in the street. I watch my child die every single night. I watch his head be crushed open. This wasn't a child running alone in the street. I was with him, and there, as far as we've been able to investigate, there was no training done after my son's death. My son's death was not even worth an hour of training. Our children need sidewalks because life doesn't matter anymore. Everybody has a cell phone. Nobody's paying attention. And the fact that a district didn't even care about my child's life enough to do an hour of training. So we need sidewalks. It's time. Children 20 years from now will need sidewalks. The village is growing. That's a good thing. With growth comes change. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. We have one more, Audrey Garcia.
Thank you. Audrey Garcia, 141 Cherry Street. Let's see. I have, as I mentioned, I have a couple of questions that, I've asked over and over and nobody will give me an answer for. The first one is, my house is one of those that will be impacted by parking. And I do want to say that, I think it was Nick who mentioned that, that parking is an issue because there's more traffic. I have 2 cars. I've always had 2 cars. And so, my neighbors have had 2 cars. So parking is not an issue of more traffic. Parking is where do we put our cars? It's a logical question. You're taking me from 2 spaces to 1 space. My car is, my SUV is too tall to go in my garage. And my pickup is too long to go in my garage. So our garage is pretty much useless right now. And there's nobody answering, and I've asked several times, where do I put my other car? Somebody mentioned, we'll have it hang over the sidewalk. Well, then why bother put a sidewalk in if the car is just going to be hanging over it? And it's fine until you get a ticket. The other question that I have is, taking away those parking spaces is going to drop my property value. And what are you going to do about that? My property value goes down, your taxes go down. So, you're looking at a lot of different people in the neighborhood are going to be affected by this with their property taxes going down, because honestly, you have a choice to buy a house that has a very short driveway. We can get one, or in one of my neighbor's cases, 0 parking. Where do you think they're going to buy? They're not going to buy that house. They're going to buy a house that's got a nice 2-car garage, or 2-car garage, 2-car or 4-car driveway. And that's what they're going to do. This neighborhood was not built with sidewalks in mind. And as was mentioned, they did take 8 feet of our front yard, so to begin with. So, right there off the bat, we have already lost a lot of our yard. Now you want to take more of that. And, I just wondering, where is it going to stop? Were you eventually going to be, oh, well, these carriage walks aren't good enough, so now we have to take, another thing and take, more yard and basically be, right outside my front window. I also mentioned before that ever since you did that, ever since the street was widened, we have between my house and my neighbor's house, when it rains very hard, we have a river running through there. And, taking away more green space to add, sidewalk, more cement, that's just going to make the problem worse. And, how are you going to deal with that? So I really, and I feel for Rachel for losing her child. And I was there. I literally happened right in the intersection in front of my house. So I did see, poor Samuel out there. But honestly, who can say that a sidewalk would have saved him? I don't think anybody here can say that. Anybody can say that, oh, if only we had a sidewalk, he wouldn't have been in the street. That's not necessarily true. And as somebody else mentioned, kids just run. So could they have run, I understand the safety issue, but I don't think the sidewalks are going to negate that issue. It's always going to be there. And I just don't feel right now, obviously I'm saying that I don't believe that sidewalks are necessary in a 70-year-old neighborhood that's been already messed with. It's already been shrunk. All the houses were put, especially on Cherry Street, were pushed very far forward because our houses run, or my backyard is basically Chicago Northwestern. So they had to put the houses much more forward, and we have a long backyard. So, when you look at trying to take an old neighborhood and retrofit it, you're going to, the other thing that, I was looking at as I was leaving was the electricity poles. The one that is in between our houses is like probably 2 feet from the road. So, one of the things I think you also need to consider is the cost of Commonwealth Edison to move those poles, because they're going to have to go a lot further back. If you take this in either scenario of the sidewalks, they're going to have, it's another cost you're going to have to incur and look at. So, I just, and as you can see, 60% of the people do not want these. I really wish you would listen to that. And, I understand, and it's very difficult when you see, people crying. It does, it hurts your heart. But, I wish you would take logic into account as opposed to just going with a crying mother. And I do appreciate your time. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Audrey. That concludes my list. There's other people here that, would you like to address the committee? Come on up. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any, hadn't had a prior interest in this other than coming to the meeting tonight. I'm Gary Miller, 316 Clare Lane. Just listening to this as sort of an objective third party, because I don't live in that neighborhood. It strikes me when I looked at those other neighborhoods that were put up there as comparisons without sidewalks, this seems to be the only subdivision that's right along a major thoroughfare. So you're going to get more cars going in there. And I also started thinking, that dispensary went in right next to this neighborhood. so I could see where people are gonna pass that, turn into that neighborhood and come out. And so, you know, I would say those are important considerations because that will increase the traffic. It's gonna increase the traffic of people who don't know the area and increase safety concerns along a major thoroughway. And I would also say that there's potentially, in my view, a liability issue on the part of the city, having approved a dispensary right there with a neighborhood where you have a bunch of citizens here that are saying, we need it for safety. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to comment? I encourage you, this is a perfect opportunity for you to voice your opinion. That's what we're here for. Anybody else like to say something? Okay. I will, if during the village board or the committee discussion, if there are other questions that may come up when we're through, please raise your hand and I would be happy to answer any questions or whatever. You know, this, I'll start from, this is a very difficult situation, and no one wants to be in this situation. So I want to open it up to the trustee or the committee trustees, whatever you want to call ourselves here at this meeting, to get some feedback on what your thoughts are. Anybody want to jump in?
Sure. My first question is on the parking options 1 and 2, and it shows the change. Is the change because the cars would be overhanging the sidewalk and that's blocking the sidewalk? Yes.
Correct.
The other question is there a village ordinance that any part of the car blocking the sidewalk can be ticketed? Chief Finley?
The way it reads is it's blocking the sidewalk. So any amount could block that sidewalk.
Could be ticketed.
Yes.
But we did this many years ago. We had a situation where if people are, you know, times are different now. People have more cars than they had before. And as long as, I think, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, as long as if the resident is showing that they are doing their best to keep their cars off of that, it's really up to the discretion of the officer.
Well, yeah, it's always up to discretion of the officer to issue a citation, but what we do look at is the time of the season as well. In the summer and spring, people tend to walk more than they do in the winter and fall, perhaps, and that is a consideration in regards to the degree of enforcement that we take. Plus, we respond to complaints from the citizenry. So if someone complains about a vehicle parking, blocking a sidewalk, there tends to be more of a, impetus to enforce that statute at that time.
Thank you.
So we're talking seasonal. Can't you park on the street most of the season here? You wouldn't be blocking the sidewalk overnight, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the exception of December, January, February, and March, yes, you can park on the roadway. There also comes a issue as it relates to the width of the roadway, where we have addressed that in, I think it's the Arrowhead subdivision, Arrowhead, where we restricted parking to one side of the roadway because we had narrowed roadways in that area.
Is this roadway narrower than regular streets?
I think it's wider now than it's been in the past. I think you're talking about like behind Saints Peter and Paul, that subdivision back there. Those are very narrow streets.
These are local streets, so they are, Kayla, I don't know if you know the exact width, but they're not exceptionally wide. They're standard width to the current standards. I know someone mentioned that the road was widened in the past, and it was probably, especially near at that time, it was brought up to probably the standard width for a local street. And just another thing to point out, with on-street parking and cars, that does also come with it the challenges of visibility of seeing people walking between the cars into the road and crossing. They're harder to see when there's a car parked on the road as opposed to an open parkway or sidewalk.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Trustee Collier? No. Trustee Dudek, anything?
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, and I will tell you, in 13 years doing this, we've had a lot of very tough decisions to make, but I've never had to make a decision over a life, ever. I don't like to have to do that, so I really feel bad about your son. We have to find a way to solve the issue, and if sidewalks is the way to solve the issue, then we have to figure out a way to put sidewalks in. We should not be sitting here in a village board meeting talking about a 3-year-old that got killed and making a decision because of that. That should never have come up, so we got to find a way to do it somehow.
Trustee Safani?
Have we looked at, well, can you go back to option 1 for me? I got a couple quick questions here. So we can't go from 6 to 4,
Not on a carriage walk.
not on a carriage walk. But it's not a law, it's just a standard that the state has put out there, correct?
It is a standard based on safety.
Okay. Have we looked at any grant funding around this at all? For actually funding this? Because, I mean, this is a pretty penny to pinch here.
I'll say since I've been here, I am unaware that any grants have been applied for this, but
And yes, we're always, and that goes not just for this neighborhood, but village-wide, we're very tuned to the different grant opportunities that are out there. We have not found one at this point that is, like I say, a really good fit, but if one does come up, we would definitely look and seek it out.
Okay, and then we're technically looking for next fiscal, correct? Or is it this fiscal?
2025.
if approved, we would be looking to fit it into the budget within clear time frame and potentially within next budget year if that was passed. For design, I'm sorry if you have something else.
Yeah, Director Noon is correct. Design would be, if given the green light, next, or this coming fiscal year, which begins May, and then I believe the proposed schedule that the team had laid out there would be construction in summer of 2025, which is not next fiscal year, but the one after.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Trustee Walworth?
Were there any opportunities to maybe marry up the two ideas? We had the idea of sidewalks everywhere. We have the idea of sidewalks just on the outside. And what's flashing through my mind is trying to find some combination of the two with potentially a striped crosswalk in the middle, trying to mitigate those folks that would lose parking spaces. Because it is a legitimate concern in older homes that I understand the vehicle doesn't fit in it. Some other combination of maybe just on the inside, around the inside, something that provides a clear pathway from a clear lighted, or excuse me, a designated pathway from the vast majority of houses to the bus stop, because I think that would be the single most important one. So I would encourage us to look at some sort of hybrid, if that's possible, just to reduce those 6 or 8 homes that would have a reduction. I'm not an engineer, I can't tell you what that would be, but I think that would be an interesting conversation to have. And the only commentary I would have is if you've ever attended these, I don't think you've ever heard me at a loss for words, and I am. This is unnecessary. This is what we're here for. We're here to protect our own. It's not a 51-49 scenario. It's not a 60-40 scenario. If that was the case, most of the stuff we've done that have progressed in society wouldn't have been done. We don't just sit around and wait for 8 people to decide out of 10 that, yep, that's the right thing to do. We do the right thing, and if you don't like the way I vote, I'll tell you when I'm up for re-election. That's my only comment.
Trustee McAlpine?
Kind of hard to follow those comments. This is, first and foremost, what I would say to everyone in this neighborhood is that everyone is healing. And I think someone mentioned that some people are going to have this till their dying breath. And that is gut-wrenching. It's very, very difficult to hear. Nobody wants to have anyone have to experience something like that. The one thing I would say is try, and this is easy. If a neighbor is not for this, it doesn't mean that they're not compassionate and don't care about you. I know that it's easy to think that that's what they're thinking, but I don't believe that anybody, even when people come out in the meetings before, that were against it never meant the intention of, hey, we didn't care about this life, we don't care about that. That being said, yeah, I want to come up with a solution. I want to come up with something that's going to work. I don't have the answers. Yeah, we find the way to get something paid for if it's something that we need to do. We want to do it as, in the best way possible. You know, I like the idea of course, what Trustee Walrus said about marrying up something, see if there's something hybrid that can be done. I know we're looking at this. I don't have a solution, but I'm just, as a mom, it breaks my heart. As a person, it breaks my heart. It doesn't matter whether I'm a man or male or female. So I do want to see something that we can do, but see what's the best solution. I am concerned about whoever lives at 22 2nd Street, because it looks like they have no parking. What's our solution for that? I don't know if they're here. I don't have that address down here that they spoke.
Are the residents from 22 here? Because they're not on our list.
Okay.
I was hoping that somebody would
Yeah, when
come
I see that and it
forth
says
so we can
zero
talk about,
parking spots, yeah.
you know, sometimes people that live in the neighborhood, sorry, I don't mean to step on your, might have an idea. They live there, they go through this every single day. They may think, well, why don't we try this?
So, I mean, that's kind of my comments on it, and I will pass the baton to you, Trustee Weinhammer.
So, I feel like at a loss for words too. For me personally, I'm always going to put the public safety as my number one priority when making decisions. So I am in favor of sidewalks.
As I said before, when we first started this conversation, public safety is our first concern. And it always has. Every decision we make, you talk about housing density, you talk about egresses to different things. It's not just this. Everything that we do is about public safety. And I don't want, I want to try to let you know that our board is very compassionate towards this. We understand. I don't want you to think away that we're just thinking about the money. The money is a factor. I think what gives me what I want to try to work on is taking people's property. I mean, I think everybody would agree that if it was a normal subdivision, not that you're not normal, but if it was a regular subdivision that we have throughout the community and you had those setbacks and you had that type of space, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We would be having a conversation of like, how do we get this done? We'll get this done. We'll figure out what we do. We're good at figuring out how to get things done. That's not the situation here. We have a very unique subdivision that affects 40 homes we've got 7,800 homes in our community. This affects 40. How do we make this very unique situation safe? People are comfortable without encroaching on taking people's property. That's kind of what I think of. I've talked to some people, and that's a concern. And I was hoping that some of these people that would be here to let's talk about these situations. I had conversations with some of the trustees before the meeting throughout the day. And, coming up with solutions, that's our job. That's what we have to do. We have to look at things in the big picture. We have an entire community that we're responsible for. And this is a tough one. It's like Trustee Dudek said, I've been involved in the village for almost 14 years. This is tough. This is very tough. We have to come up with a plan that'll work. And it definitely sounds like the board is having the direction that we would like to do sidewalks. To be honest with you, I'm not concerned about the cost. I am concerned about the cost. There are ways that we can try to figure things out. There's always a way to handle that, right, Courtney? And we're in the budget season. This is one of the topics that we're going to talk about during our CIP, which is our capital improvement, what we're going to do, how we're going to make these things fit, what can we put to the back burner, what can we push to next year. We could look at those type of things. We can look at grants. We're very good. We've got a very astute staff that helps us get grants. We've got clear lanes to our legislators. We have federal and state legislators that I think would listen to us in a plea for this. So I think that we need to, not to jump on Trustee Walrus bandwagon, but I'm going to. And I thought about that last night when I was reviewing some of these slides. Is there a way that we can put these things together? Can you do a carriage walk on one part, and can you do a regular parkway on another, and try to figure out a way that's the least impactful for people to lose their parking? I mean, we have this one resident at 22 2nd Street is not going to have any parking. That's a problem. You know, so when we look at these things, really, when you look at this, and I think some of the neighbors would agree, if you're going from 4 to 2, you could probably live with that, but you're going from 2 to nothing, that's an issue. So these are the kind of things that we need to think about when we move going forward. Time is of the essence because we have a construction season comes up, and we have engineering that's involved, and we have to decide if this is the direction that we want to go. And I think that the board is in favor of the sidewalks, and we got to figure this out. The gentleman in the back, you had another question. Please come up and speak.
So I'm looking at this diagram talking about driveways and parking spots. And I had the pleasure of being in the last meeting where we saw a presentation for a proposed building across the street, and parking was talked about. In that presentation, they talked about a combination of garage parking and parking spots that are surface level. Does this parking spot count the garages that are attached to each of these homes?
No,
So we're not eliminating parking at anyone's houses. We're just eliminating potential parking in their driveway. They have a garage that they can park a vehicle in. Every single house, to my knowledge, in our neighborhood has a garage, at least for one car. Some of them have two. You're not taking anybody's complete parking away. Number 2, I invite you, when it's a little bit warmer, to come up to the Hilltop subdivision. Come when the buses come. There's one for the high school, comes early in the morning, comes very fast through the neighborhood. I know, I walk my dog. Come when the school for the middle school or the junior high and elementary come through. Goes very fast through the neighborhood. Come in the evening when other people are walking their dogs. You haven't been in our subdivision. You don't know it. There are garages, and it's unsafe to walk in the subdivision.
Just a quick question. Have we thought about is it possible to do a one-way street? So then if you do the sidewalk, or if you do carriage on one side, if it eliminates parking, then we can do street parking for them to kind of offset it?
No, those are options. Obviously, when you structurally reconfigure the roadway, say to narrow the roadway to make room for the sidewalk, you're looking at more significant costs with grading and subsurface improvements that have to go along with it, as opposed to a sidewalk, which is more minimal of a stone base and adding into the parkway.
Got it.
So it is possible. It just has more engineering involved.
Chief Finland, we just make a mental note or a notation to contact the superintendents of each of those schools to say that we had a complaint tonight about this, about buses driving fast. I'd like to hear what they have to say about that.
Okay.
Would you please come up to the microphone, state your name and address?
Ellen Sherwood, 112 South 2nd Street. I got no parking problems, but if you walk around the neighborhood now, for the next 4 months, the only thing open is the streets. There's no sidewalks, and no one shovels anything. So if you have a sidewalk, how are they gonna use it during the winter? No one shovels the sidewalks, and then if you have one off the curb, they push snow on there. So I'm a for solution, but good luck.
I appreciate that. We do have an ordinance that residents are required to shovel their
Yeah,
we
well, a
we
lot
just
of them
had
don't listen to that.
We're well aware of that, and we are on that right now. We get calls about being able to walk on the sidewalks. Anybody else? There was somebody else that raised their hand. Could you come up to the microphone, please, and restate your name and address?
Audrey Garcia, 141 Cherry Street. And I just want to make a rebuttal to the fact that he claims that they're not taking any parking spaces. And as I already mentioned, neither of our cars fit into our garage. So, taking the assumption that I can just, apparently just, go to the back and, make a hole in the back of my, to fit my truck, is kind of ridiculous. We have to park on our driveway. Neither of our cars, as I mentioned, fit into our garage. Again, they're very old houses, and it was not built for pickup trucks or SUVs. They're built for sedans. So, I just wanted to make that rebuttal that, you are taking parking space from us that we barely have to begin with. When we pull up, if you drive down our street, you'll see, the truck is, usually my car's first and my husband's truck is last, and it's probably 2 feet, if that, from the curb. Because our driveway is short, and as I mentioned, all the houses on Cherry Street are pushed forward. At least on my side is Cherry Street. They are pushed forward. So you literally are taking parking spaces. The garages don't count. So just a rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from somebody we haven't heard from before. The gentleman in the back, could you please come up and state your name and address?
Hi, my name is Jerry McBreen, and I live at 121 Cherry Street. I'm an individual who will be affected by this. I will lose parking. I'm also a realtor, and I just thought I would bring to the table that although losing your space might be an issue for that one house that does have a garage, it's just that the vehicles don't fit in the garage, but it is a garage. And as John said, every one of our neighbors, we all have garages. I'll lose a lot of parking there, but I'm willing to give it up. The tragedy that we saw in the neighborhood was just too great. I really didn't even know the family that well, but really could offer my condolences at the wake just because I was there and I saw it all. So I'm one of the people that probably will be affected by it for quite a long time. But in general, as a realtor, I can tell you that home values go up when there are when there are sidewalks in the neighborhood, because it is a safety factor, and families are always looking to make sure that there are sidewalks in the neighborhood. So in general, home values will go up. Second, the sidewalks that are there they're not good at all. The concern is that they're very uneven. Old people in our neighborhood will not walk on those sidewalks because they are uneven, so that's a safety factor there. By putting in sidewalks and making sure that everybody shovels the sidewalks, I think that it would be better for the neighborhood, and it would also raise the home prices. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Does the board have any other questions or comments about this?
I just would like to know what, and maybe you're going to do this, but what's our takeaway from this? What's our next step?
Was there one more person that had their hand raised that had not had a
That
chance
had
to
not
speak?
spoken?
I think Ellen had her hand raised.
Hey there. I'm at 15 Ross Avenue. You just heard my husband speak at the beginning of the discussion today. But I just had one question. Rick, you had alluded to it. So what are the next steps here? I can't imagine us doing this over and over and over again with all these different just going back and forth solutioning, right? Like, it seems that there is a consensus here, like, let's have sidewalks. So what's the deadline here of voting on it and then figuring out just what's the timeline? And then the second thing I just wanted to mention is in terms of other possible solutions. So I know Audrey mentioned that she's gonna be losing parking, and maybe there's an opportunity where we stop the sidewalk on that dead end, and we just connect it to another part, or something that maybe we don't necessarily have to have a walkway. I wish I had the map up to that teeny part of the, yes, to on the lower right. If you see what I'm saying, like it would be 141, and then you connect it across across the street. Maybe that's a option. Or on Second Street, where you mentioned that someone's going to be losing all of their parking, but he does have a garage. Maybe start I know you wouldn't connect it from 14 to our neighborhood, but that one little patch, okay, maybe not have a sidewalk right there, and it just begins right after his house. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out some different configurations to this to make everyone happy, but I just wanted to throw that out there as an idea. So thanks.
To answer your question, Trustee Dudek, the takeaway from this is that we have some work to do. I think we have the consensus of the committee. We don't vote at a committee. It's just a consensus building to take it to the next level. What the takeaway is that we have to figure out a solution, what's going to be the best way to be the least impactful for parking issues. Again, this is something that it's going to take a little extra time to go through. So I think that the takeaway and the time frame is going to be relatively quick. I will have our Public Works Director and our Village Administrator get together and work with our engineers to think of something outside the box. Think of ways that we could marry the two ways together that we could make a safe travel. Maybe like Ellen had said, eliminate one of the areas, make turns, whatever. You know, we need to work together as a community to figure this out. You know, nothing's in stone right now. It's very fluid. You know, we've been talking about this for the last week. You know, how is this going to go? Where are we going to go? What are the next steps? What after the meeting that you had with the other things? How is this going to go tonight? How are we going to make sure that people are heard and we come up with a plan that's going to be complementary to everybody? You know, it's not going to be 100% for everybody. I can tell you that right now. It's not going to be 100%. We're going to do the best that we can, and we'll figure it out. That's our job. And our job as elected officials is to engage our high-powered staff to say, okay, figure this out. Let's come up with some plans. So we have all of your email addresses and addresses. We will keep you in the loop. I would say we would be working on this in the next couple of weeks. We have a CM.
So as the mayor mentioned, the goal here was to get the feedback and some direction from our committee on which direction to further pursue. And as the mayor mentioned, it's not where it's going to be another 2-3 years till we have that decision, that recommendation. So what you see here based on this timeline is that we will still be looking for identifying what that selected preferred alternative is from our team to propose and for our board to look at, and then that will be incorporated with our overall capital improvement program and our budget process. So our timeline is to determine what that option is that is the best option to try and incorporate the most of the factors as possible. Like the mayor mentioned, there isn't one solution that's going to make 100% everybody happy. Otherwise, it would have been done, obviously. But we will take this direction from this evening, the direction from the meeting earlier this week and the previous meetings. And we will provide the village board with that option to consider with our overall CIP. And that's where the balancing of the different priorities of our projects will come into play. And then with that being said, and that timeline is the spring as well, that would keep us on the timeline that if the final direction is to move forward on the sidewalk, we would still look for this timeline here to be in design next fiscal year. So basically this 2024 calendar year, and then aim for construction in 2025 once that final best alternative is laid out.
Just add the CIP presentation is February 13th, if that helps.
And our final budget approvals are in March. Our budget workshops, are in March with approval in April.
As we've said, this is very fluid right now. We've got a lot of pieces to try to put together, to come up with a plan that's going to be acceptable. So does anybody else have any other questions? Does this timeline meet what your expectations are? It is what it is. And, you know, we're very transparent about where this is. And we have to make a decision if we want to get this done in the next cycle of construction in 2025. We've got to make sure it's taken care of right now. Any, the board have any other questions, comments?
I do have, just for clarification, can you put the slide up that had all the numbered lots for a second?
The map?
Yeah. And I know there was a lot of conversation about the person who would lose 2 spots and would go to 0. So that's 22 up on here. Okay.
Again, we can marry these things to try to figure this out.
Okay, and I think the other, I was more focused on 147 and 149. I think this was, going to the comments that were made at the very end. Doesn't seem logical maybe to have that sidewalk go there, but then to go across, because it seems like 147 would lose too. So, again, not to drag it out, but I wanted to kind of, since those folks know the neighborhood much better than I do, get feedback, and maybe that's something they could do also in the meantime, Mark, when we're doing all this, is to give us some of their feedback for where the stops and starts might go to try to help as many people in their neighborhood keep what they can keep. That's all I had to say.
All right, thank you.
Mayor,
Anything else?
Mayor, I just want to.
Yes.
As we were at our open house, that was some of the feedback that we were looking for. And prior to everybody leaving it, I did give everybody my business card. And unfortunately, I don't have any on me right now, but I can get their information and provide it. And if they have drawings like that, excuse me, I would welcome those so that we could take that information into consideration as we get into looking at designs.
One more question. Could you come up to the, you have to state your name and address. Everything's being recorded, and you have to be at the microphone, so
Okay.
that's why I don't take.
Okay, Catherine Arneberg, 127 Cherry Street. I'm actually neighbors with Audrey, and I am, before that little cul-de-sac, I don't know exactly what you call it, you can take my front yard completely to somehow design it to go to the, like a sidewalk that goes into a crosswalk to the opposite side of the house, like across the street. I'm completely open to that, and you can have my whole front yard, so you can have your garage space, because I understand and I respect, and, but I'm just saying, I'm offering up all that to you.
I appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
I appreciate the community spirit that we've had tonight. Thank you very much. I think that's indicative of our village, to be honest with you. So thank you very much. Is there anything else? None said. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:59.
One last thing.
We're adjourned.
I live on Lloyd Street, and that's the first street through, from the high school. And we used to have a lot of buses going up and down the street. And we contacted the school districts, and the only buses we have going up and down the street now are to the bus stops. So that is strongly suggested about contacting the school districts about going slower through there. So it does make a difference.
Yeah, they do.
And
Yeah,
the
that's what I want.
police and the high school have been notified. So high school, we used to get a ton of traffic going on there. Now we're lucky if we get 5 cars. So
Thank you.
Interesting.